Very wise, little ones. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Murgo's Beard. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do the voice for the whole video, otherwise I won't be able to speak for a week. In this video, I'm going to break down both trailers we received from the Summer Games Fest of this year and last, showing you literally everything that I saw. I've spent the best part of 2 weeks watching these videos on quarter speed, and I've found quite a lot of things that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. Some of these things may seem insignificant to you, other things may seem more interesting. Whatever the case, I'm going to show you anyway. If you did spot something I spotted, feel free to comment about it with praise below. If you think you spotted something that I didn't, feel free to share that as well. Sharing is caring at the end of the day. However, just so you know, I am in possession of an Old Kingdom magical mirror, which allows me to speak to the spiritual essence of Peter Molyneux himself, and so you can be assured that everything that I say is pure truth. I'll refer to the first video as the Dave trailer and the second video as the Humphrey trailer. If you haven't seen those trailers yet, please go and watch them first. I will link them below. This breakdown video will be split into many parts. The main theme of each part will be labelled at the top of your screen. In the final part of the video, I'll talk about some potential spoilery things and some predictions of my own, but generally this entire video has a spoiler warning. And so without further ado, for those of you who do want to get into the breakdown, let's get into it. Starting out, both of these trailers begin with the words in-game footage. For you guys who aren't sure what that means, it means that this is representative of the actual game running on actual hardware. Just a really quick simple example, the original teaser trailer which did not say in-game footage, versus the Humphrey trailer which did say in-game footage. The views of what I will refer to as Fairfax Castle are completely different. We now know that Fairfax Castle will not look like it did in the teaser trailer, but instead look exactly how it does in the Humphrey trailer. With that out of the way, let's move on to the characters. We've seen a bunch of characters and NPCs that I feel are worth mentioning. First of all, we have our playable hero, who I will refer to as our character. We have Dave from the Dave trailer. We have Humphrey from the Humphrey trailer. We have this companion-like hero, who I will refer to as Whisper 2. We have the fanboy NPC. We have the hater NPC. We have this very upset man, who I will refer to as the sheriff. The reason I'm calling him the sheriff is because he has this very police-like badge on his chest. We have recycled NPC 1, who can be seen twice in the Dave trailer, both here, and once in the Humphrey trailer here. We have recycled NPC 2, who can be seen in the Dave trailer here. He's the guy who compliments our chicken kicking. And he can be seen in the Humphrey trailer here with the fanboy at the bar. We have recycled NPC 3, who is in the Humphrey trailer very clearly here, and very, very briefly in the background of the troll scene here. Hats off to you if you spotted that. And then in the same scene as recycled NPC 1, we also have recycled NPC 4 and 5, who can be seen respectively in the Dave trailer, both here and here. We have this thing that I will refer to as the Big Bad Balverine. I'll get into that later. And lastly, we have our antagonist lady, who I will call Lena. And I'll tell you why I'm calling her that in the prediction part at the end of the video. Let's look at some locations or regions. This is clearly Bowerstone, unless they decide to change the name. We get a perfect view of Fairfax Castle, and a cozy little snippet of a more backstreet-like area with some children running around and a stall. The building style is very reminiscent of Fable 2, which pleases me greatly, although almost all the houses seem to be 3 stories high. I hope very much that we can open all the doors, climb all the stairs, and look through all the windows. We also see Bowerstone from this angle, which, I think, by the way, is the main street just as we enter the city gates. The reason I think this is the entrance to the city is because there is what looks to be a signpost or a notice board or whatever you call it here. You know, one of those things that people post requests or bounties on or things like that. It only makes sense to have one of those near the gates, no? And finally, there's clearly a store of some sort here. I can't quite read what the sign says, but it looks a little bit like odds and sods. But it's probably a general store because there's a jug and what looks like some food on there. We've seen many views of a forest-like region that I'm going to call Bower Lake for the sake of convenience. I think all the forest scenes we've seen are in the same region of Bower Lake. Two simple reasons for this is that in some scenes we can see a similar angle of Fairfax Castle, and I also think that Playground is still keeping a lot of content close to their chest. They aren't going to show us too much until the time is right. What we do see though is a big beautiful tree. There's many things hanging on the tree, so I believe that someone or something lives here and our character is on the way to see them. There's a few nighttime scenes with different creatures, an evening scene when we kick the chicken and get complimented by recycled NPC 2, multiple bandit fight scenes, this scene here with Whisper 2, the final scene of the Humphrey trailer after the ominous
"She's back,"
and this lovely daytime stroll scene, which is also going to connect us to our next region. There's what looks like a farmhouse with white walls in the corner over there, which is also the style of housing seen in most of the Dave Trail. That logically means that the pumpkin farm and the beanstalk leading to Dave's house are both in this region too. By the way, I know it seems a bit close to Bowerstone if we go by Fable 2's standard, but due to the farmy feel, I'll be calling this place Oakfield. In the scene where our character is called a terribly naughty word, there's another sign indicating some sort of establishment. It's impossible to read, but just for the sake of happiness, let's pretend it's the Sangoose. And last for this place, I think that the house that the big bad Balverine is on top of is also part of Oakfield. A few other locations consist of the Heroes Guild, which looks fantastically lonely. It's also filled to the brim with Humphreys. And of course we got a nice look at Dave's giant home. Earlier I mentioned that some parts are player controlled. I'll pop a little red square on the screen so you can see what I mean. With the visual aid especially, it's ultra clear to me that most of the walking sequence is a straight up gameplay. This must be the exact third person view that we'll have in the game. The same placement of the character, slightly off center to the left, crops up so much that you can't convince me otherwise. This part here with the toad, by the way, is exactly the same, it's just slightly zoomed in. Even the fighting scenes have the same placement of the character. In this one, it's slightly pivoted because the player was actually using the camera to look around, and on multiple occasions we see the camera zooms in accordingly depending on the situation. We can see it here for aiming purposes. Likewise, in this one, the camera is completely rotated 180 degrees so that we're actually facing our character. That is a feature of third-person cameras, by the way, and it zooms in again here when we initiate what looks like some kind of finishing move. Yet another time when we see this happen is when our character approaches the fanboy at the bar and begins some directed dialogue. Lastly, we see some scenes in Dave's home, which look like scripted events, but the camera follows us all the same. Next up is our confirmed enemies and creatures. There's bandits in both trailers, a group of hobs in the Humphrey trailer, Balverines, which are Fable's version of werewolves. Although the big bad Balverine here seems to be connected to a quest involving our character, we know it's not a completely unique creature because there's another one dead here in this cave. Unfortunately, we can't see the head on the dead one, and the close-up of the big bad Balverine doesn't exactly look like the Balverines from previous titles. But then with the graphical upgrade and the partial realism that Playground are bringing, it's a fairly understandable change. We get a very clear look at a troll. We know it's a troll because, just like before, its life seems to be connected to these grubs. And if you look at its back here, it seems to be camouflaged perfectly so it can burrow into the ground and spring up surprising unexpected victims. Then, as a new addition to the squad, we've got giant toads. Well, I think that's the perfect place to have a tea break. Feel free to pause it here, get yourself up, grab a cuppa, stretch out a bit, and then let's meet back here in 3 seconds to continue the breakdown.
Let's do it.
Okay, welcome back. This next theme is a spicy one. I want to talk about combat. It's not all controlled gameplay like the camera scenes from before, but looking deeply into a few key moments, I think they've shown quite a lot of mechanics when it comes to in-game combat. Starting out here when our character clashes swords with a bandit, showing a very high possibility that blocking is a thing. In this scene with the troll, our character swiftly dodges an incoming wagon, giving me a slight suspicion that there's a dodge button as well. Magic gets confirmed on multiple occasions. One thing I do want to point out, by the way, is that the bow, that probably made a lot of you think, oh look, ranged combat, is actually a form of nature magic. We can tell this because the bow's original form is a small handle-like thingamabob, And our character then stomps the ground, causing a green explosion, the same time as which the bow extends and takes its true form. And finally, the arrow that we knock is pulled literally out of thin air with the same green magic effect as the ground stomp. Perhaps we'll be able to buy actual bows too, but this one for sure is connected directly to the magic system. Next, there's this amazing scene where our character catches this bolt mid-flight and throws it straight back, scoring a perfect headshot. To me, that shows that we can perfect block and deflect certain incoming attacks with the right timing. I mentioned this one briefly before, but we get multiple finishing moves. Our character trips this guy and then the camera cuts just before we do something terribly nasty. Our character kicks this guy in the knee and then proceeds to use the sword incorrectly and bash his head in with the handle. I'm not sure how we can hit something that hard whilst directly holding the blade and not cut our own fingers off. But hey, that's what makes us a hero, I guess. By the way, just look at how much fun our character is having murdering these poor souls. And then we see it again when we pull out the grub to finish off the troll. On to gameplay features. Chicken kicking was confirmed last year, which pleased a lot of people. Choices seem to be a large part of the game, as you would expect. Humphrey talks about it here.
It's about the choices you make.
And so does Whisper 2 when she's contemplating drinking this Balverine strength potion. There's definitely a renown system. We know this thanks to the fanboy NPC and the hater NPC. If you're a nobody, then you aren't going to have either of them, are you? Believe me, I should know. Here as well, the other NPCs react in sheer horror at the thought of our character being a wanker. And then you've got to be loved in some regard in order to steal the sheriff's pint, neck it, throw it on the ground, and receive a round of applause. Also, the guy you stole it from is smiling. If that's not fame, then I don't know what is. Humphrey briefly touches on a romance feature. And lastly, the most exciting of them all, you eagle-eyed viewers will have noticed this rather nice signpost outside this house. It looks exactly like the signs in previous titles, which allow us to purchase buildings, adjust prices for rent and sales alike, and even enter decoration mode. I'm already impressed if you spotted that, but I can go on further. It's not the only time we see one. I'll give you 3 seconds to find another. No, wait, 2. Sod it. It's here in the darkness as our character speaks very seriously to a collapsed sheriff. But yes, with the addition of this sign, any of you with doubt on the subject can leave it all behind and start smiling. I'm just hoping everything is purchasable. Literally everything. There's a few confirmed quests. The Dave trailer understandably introduces the Dave quest, which is a straight-up reference to Jack and the Beanstalk. There was a lot of talk of whether this is actually Dave using some kind of magic to make him small, or if they're using his model as a placeholder for another NPC. We know that it's Dave because he's crossing his arms in the argument like he's proud of what he's done, and we know for certain that he is proud.
On a day-to-day basis, I'd say the true hero is me, someone who's breaking new ground with fruit, with veg, on the agricultural side of things.
And then on top of that, when we meet him in his house, both our character and Dave agree that this is an awkward moment. Why would it be awkward unless our character and Dave had met previously trying to solve this argument peacefully on the ground, only for us to find out that Dave's behind it all and he's actually the giant we've come to slay. The 2 bandit fights in the Humphrey trailer are clearly connected as the background is the same. It might not be a specific story quest as much as some general mobs on the road, but I'd like to pretend that the structure in the background is actually a bandit hideout and we've been tasked with clearing it out. This could be the kind of quest we get off the notice board here. The big bad Balverine in Oakfield is almost certainly going to be the first major interaction we have with Balverines in this game. And due to the significance of this specific Balverine getting its own cutscenes, and the fact that our character is the one to confront it, I'm thinking its quest might also have references like the Dave quest and follow one of these 3 storylines. The other view of a dead Balverine in this cave is probably a separate quest altogether. I mean, it would kind of take away from our renown if the Balverine just ran off and died in a cave. Also, the sheriff is sat right next to it here. And yes, this is the same sheriff that our character talks to here.
You thought you could save her?
The her that we're referring to could be anyone really, although Whisper 2's scene seems to be conveniently timed just before this, making it seem like a chronological occurrence. There's numerous scenes with different mobs. The troll one has its own cutscenes, so it must be a scripted event, but the others are probably just random battles. And lastly, what I believe to be the main quest of the game, defeating Lena. Humphrey constantly talks about a girl gone bad, which is perfectly crafted to look like he's telling our story. Right until the end, of course, when the truth is revealed and Lena comes in with the goal of changing this place. After a few viewings, I also noticed that behind the mace in the guild at the beginning of the Humphrey trailer, there's actually a damaged picture of Lena. We can tell it's her because of the gloves, cape, and staff. So Humphrey and Lena clearly have some complex prior master and student type relationship, which sounds exciting to dive into. From now on, I'm going to talk about some thoughts of my own. Firstly, a small rant about the character creation or selection. If you want my honest opinion, and this includes a tidbit of knowledge from a game design degree, there is no character creator. We'll 99.99% have the choice of a boy or a girl hero. It's silly to think otherwise. We'll also have customizations like hair, clothes, makeup, tattoos, etc. But as far as facial structure customization goes, don't get your hopes up. We can see how much our character's animations and facial accuracy have increased in just 1 year of polishing. She already looks exactly like the actress she's modelled on, and there's still time for further polishing. What is understandable to expect, and much easier to implement, is body and facial morphs, like in the previous titles. For this, all you need to do is take a face you've already perfected and make different references to it for it to change into, depending on, say, morality sliders, for example. However, if you start messing around with the facial foundations, it's just gonna get messy.
Yeah.
There is no way that a studio that have given Dave and Humphrey, who are not even the main characters by the way, absolutely flawless facial animations, are going to cop out on the face of the main character, who we'll be seeing for literally the whole game. We don't want another Andromeda situation. Come on now. Something that concerned me a lot more than our main character did was the other NPCs in the world. I wasn't too happy with the plain, boring clothing that everyone seemed to be wearing, and some of the NPCs' facial animations as well were just not clean, especially when you compare them to the more focused characters. However, I was wrong to focus on these NPCs when I should have instead focused on NPCs like the fanboy or the hater. There is no way that these are important characters, which means they're simply polished townsfolk, making all the other plain ones unpolished townsfolk, especially when we take into account the recycled NPCs I mentioned before. Of course, I don't want everyone to look like these two either. There should be a mix of clothing styles to show class and social standing too. And to be honest, after seeing these two and a few other decent looking ones in the background of the Humphrey trailer, I'm sure that every piece of content we get from here on out will be more and more detailed in this area. Optimism, yeah? And here it is, ladies and gentlemen. Spoiler alert. I know who plays the antagonist, and I've been teasing it for this entire video. As we all know, Fable has never been afraid of casting celebrities. We've had John Cleese, Simon Pegg, Michael Fassbender, Ben Kingsley, Stephen Fry, Zoe Wanamaker, and this time around we have Richard Ayoade as Dave and Matt King as Humphrey. So is it so hard to believe that the main antagonist might also get celebrity casting, and a pretty well-known one at that? Alright, here we go. I've hyped it up enough. I've kept you waiting long enough. It is time. Game of Thrones fans beware. I want you to listen to this very carefully whilst watching exactly what I put on your screen.
I'm going to fix it. This place. And no one is going to stand in my way.
There's only so many times you can listen to the same voice say the same line over and over again before the person starts cropping up in your dreams. And that's either the voice of Lena Headey herself, or they've cheaped out and hired an extremely talented Cersei Lannister impressionist. If that wasn't enough proof, I got even more for you. Remember that Fable Legends game that never came out? Well, Lena Headey was also cast as the antagonist in that game. An antagonist who is manipulating everyone.
I'm going to fix it. This place.
Looks like someone in the office really liked that idea. Either that, or Lena really liked that idea and forced her way back in. Pat on the back for me, eh? Fantastic stuff. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. And there we go. The breakdown is over. For anyone still here, thank you so much. I'm already honoured by your viewing until the very end, but if you would be so kind, this information comes at the modest price of 1 like. A special thanks goes to Playground Games and anyone working on this project. The general reaction this year was much better than last, but please keep your heads up, keep your hearts strong, and continue making this beautiful game right up until the end to the best of your abilities. By the way, if any of you are working at Playground and have made it this far and think that I'm wrong about a few things, well, there's only one way to prove me wrong, really. Let's invite me to the studio and show me yourself, eh? And finally, a big thank you to Wife Wants a Wizard, the channel of which inspired me to make this video. I now understand your pain, sir, and I respect you profusely. To those of you who wish to up my renown, I'll be covering everything of substance until release, and maybe even make a few more focused videos. So let's enjoy this journey together. This is the game that we have been waiting for almost 14 years, ladies and gentlemen. I am sure we're all equally excited for Playground's Fable, otherwise you wouldn't have sat and listened to my boring voice for 20 minutes. And on that note, I think that's enough from me. I thank you all again, and I'll see you in the next one.